Hello, my name is Koldo Casla, and I am the author of this book, The Social Right to Property, Social Function, and Human Rights. The book deals with the tension, the relationship that exists between the institution of ownership and social rights. By social rights, I mean the rights recognized in international law as economic, social, and cultural rights, like housing, health, education, social security, and so on. The book is based on the recognition that these rights have been recognized as such in international law, but the private resources, or rather the resources necessary in order to fulfill these rights, housing, health, social security, education, many of these resources are privately owned. So we need to have a conversation about the scope, the limits, the parameters of the institution of property, and how to make compatible the recognition of private property rights with the recognition of these constitutional and international ambitions in relation to health, housing, education, and so on, social rights. The book is also based on the idea that the property does not exist in a vacuum. Property is the result of certain decisions that we make, certain institutions that we make, that we create, that we preserve collectively in our communities, in our societies. And therefore, we need to democratically define the parameters, the meaning, the significance of property in order to fulfill the goals, the social goals that we have set up for ourselves in society, including goals in relation to access to housing, for example, or access to public services. So property must serve an individual function, must satisfy the individual interest of the property owner, but also it must serve a collective interest, the social function of property. So that is what the book is about. The book has 7 chapters. The first one is a discussion about the way in which international human rights law recognizes property as a human rights and also recognizes social rights as human rights, and how in different treaties have been silent in terms of the meaning of the right to private property, and different treaties, so treaties where you would expect to find property are silent about it, and yet other treaties have different interpretations about the meaning of property, private property, collective property. So that's why I refer to international human rights law between mutism, silence, and polysemy, different definitions of the idea of property. Then I move on in the next chapter with comparative law, comparative practice of property, looking broadly at the way in which national constitutions recognize the rights to property and also the limitations of the right to property. And then I explore in particular 3 case studies from Spain, Chile, and South Africa, 3 very different countries that have nonetheless some elements in common in particular, in terms of the recognition, the formal recognition of social function or social obligation in the case of South Africa. But the concept of social function of property has been interpreted very differently in the 3 countries, and I explore a little bit why that is the case. In chapter 4, I discuss theory of property. I look at the way in which Western political theory has conceptualized property from ancient Rome, Thomas Aquinas, people like Locke, utilitarians in the 19th century. And then I move on to the critiques of property in the 20th century, in particular in relation to the concentration of wealth and the impact that it has on the commons and the impact that it has on rising inequalities. And then I discussed the concept of social function, as was coined initially by Leon Duguay in the 19th, early and 20th century. And I discussed progressive property theory as well. Chapter 5 is when I present my proposal to come up with a way of reconciling property with social rights. And I encourage colleagues in the human rights community to discuss a little bit more in detail the policy implications that he may have for the right to property, what the policy implications that taking social rights seriously have for the right to property. And chapter 6 and 7 is where I apply the proposal from chapter 5 in relation to 2 themes in the human rights fields. One is adequate housing in chapter 6, and chapter 7 is the private provision of public services, in particular energy and transportation. So that's what the book is about. The book is on, you can find it in your favorite bookstores, your online spaces, and also on the website of Edward Elgar. And you can download it for free because it is open access. And if you get to read it, please contact me because I look forward to hearing your thoughts about it. Thank you.